My lords, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the start of a brand new series. As you can plainly tell, this is going to be a series chronicling our adventures in Rimworld as we follow the trials and tribulations of a colony on this hostile and unforgiving planet. Now, for those of you more accustomed to the Transport Fever 2 series, don't panic, that will continue unabated. This is just a little side project to allow me to diversify a little, so I don't suffer too much burnout from playing the same game over and over again. Now, in terms of this series, as you can see, I have both of the DLCs enabled, Royalty and Ideology, and I've also got a whole host of mods, and I'm going to try for a fairly challenging playthrough and just see how things progress. Obviously, if you're familiar with Rimworld, you will know that no two games follow the same story path. They do diverge pretty quickly and pretty heavily, so this should be an interesting experience. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started with a new colony. Okay, so here we can choose our starting scenario. Now, in Rimworld, you are presented with 4 default vanilla scenarios here: Crash Landed Lost Tribe, Rich Explorer, and Naked Brutality. These extra ones here are added by the various mods that I have installed. However, the one I want to go for is this one here, which is Banished Native. Now at this point you can pause the video and read this filler text here, which gives a brief overview as to the context of this scenario, but the main things here are the starting conditions listed here. As we can see, we will be a new tribe, so we're going to have a tech penalty. We're only going to have 1 colonist, chosen from a pool of 8. The colonists will be at most 19 years old, at least our starting colonist will. The starting colonist will be completely naked, but we are starting with the research stonecutting. We also start with a recurve bow, but in terms of additional resources we have nothing, so we really are going to have to build ourselves up from scratch. Okay, so here's our Create World screen now, and the first thing I'm going to do is enable the Cannibal Pirate Gang and the Cannibal Tribe factions. That brings us to 11 in total. We have 1, 2, and potentially 3 and 4 neutral or friendly factions, and the rest are hostile, so it's going to make it quite interesting in terms of our raids. I am also going to increase the globe coverage for the planet to 100%, and I'm just going to hit randomize seed a few times and just see what we get. Okay, innards, quite interesting. Let's see what world this generates, shall we? Okay, so here's the world that's been generated for us. What I'm going to do now is just take a few minutes to find the ideal starting location that I have in mind, and we'll pick it back up once I've selected a tile that I believe will be suitable and appropriate. Okay, so I found an appropriate tile. It is a mountainous terrain in the ice sheet with sandstone, marble and granite present, and an average temperature of negative 34.5 degrees. With a minimum temperature of negative 60 and a maximum of negative 9. Obviously this means there's no growing period on this tile, so if we want to grow our own crops and food sources, then we're going to have to do some research before we can do that. We're also quite close to a neutral tribe here, which could come in useful if we need to do some trading. However, travelling even just this short distance would take at least, I'd imagine, 2 to 3 days, so we need to be suitably stocked up and provisioned if we're going to do a trading caravan. Now I'm just going to go to advanced and fine tune the options here. I want to set the map size to 275 by 275 and our starting season to summer, so when we first start we do have a fighting chance before we freeze to death. Obviously, if you remember, we do start naked, so the cold is going to be a killer straight away, so we want to give ourselves at least a fighting chance to survive the first couple of hours. Okay, now we can choose our religion, and I'm going to choose one that I prepared earlier. This is Talentro's Teeth, and here is the religion overview. As we said, it's Talentro's Teeth, and our 4 core tenets are: we are supremacist, collectivist, Virtuous is pain, and we are tunnelers. The two gods are Talentro and Colibai, the god of eating and the spirit of suffering, respectively. And in terms of our religious precepts, torture is always respected, comfort is ignored, we love insect meat, pain is idealised, the slab bed is preferred, rough living is welcomed, mining yield is high, and we don't mind tough temperatures. Cannibalism is acceptable, and that could become useful later. We don't care about corpses or execution, and you can see all the rest here. We have 4 religious roles. We have the leader, who is the divine chief. The moral guide is Talentro's priest. The melee specialist is the berserker, and the mining specialist is the cavecrat. We have 6 available rituals. The funeral is the interment of stone. Scarification is solidarity peeling, symbol burning is the Talentroic festival, animal sacrifice is the unity oblation, drum party Talentro's fair, and a gladiator duel the brawl of Talentro. Our religious buildings, the ritual seat is the pew, our shrine is the supreme shrine, and we have an effigy. Our relics are Xancaller, which is a silver spear, a skull called Tonlash that is made of gold, and a jade bone called Tonleer. So there you go, that is our religion for this playthrough. Okay, so here is our colonist. This is Orange Netraro. As we can see, I've made a few modifications by reducing a lot of the skills to 0. However, I've left shooting, construction, mining, and animals as is. In terms of our traits, we have Quick Sleeper, Psychopath, and Neurotic. Quick Sleeper will mean we don't need to sleep as much. Psychopath means, well, they're a psychopath, that's pretty self-explanatory. And Neurotic, that does make this colonist work faster by 20%, but as we can see, it also increases the mental break threshold by 8%. So, while it is a positive, there is also a trade-off there, so mental breaks are something we're going to have to keep a close eye on. So let's go ahead now and get started, shall we? And let's see what map has been generated for us, and see how we're going to get on. Okay, so here we are. We start with some randomly placed steel right next to us, which is very fortunate indeed. And if we scroll out, I think we've started in a pretty much perfect location, if I'm honest. We have a steam geyser just here, which we're going to need to take advantage of. We have a body of water here, which we can use to fish as a food source. We have an ancient danger here with a few abandoned beds that we can claim as our own. We also have a stockpile of wood here that was generated by the map, which we are going to claim as our own as well. We've also started near 2 wild animals, a walrus and a snow hare, which we're going to want to hunt almost immediately because they will soon disappear from the map. And if we scroll out even further, we can see that this little area we've started in here is quite defensible. We could quite easily wall this little section off just here, and this would mean the only entrance or the only access point is through here, which we could turn into a choke point and help decimate our enemies before they even get close. There's a bit more wildlife further out. We have a lynx just up here, another snow hare, and an Arctic fox. In fact, we have 2 snow hares there. So there is quite a lot of wildlife starting on the map. However, they're not going to hang around too long. Once they realise there's no sustainable food source, they will just wander off the map. Now, animals do appear randomly from time to time, but you can't really guarantee that they're going to arrive when you need them the most, i.e. when you're starving to death. So what I've done first of all is I've told Orange Netraro to equip the recurve bow. I've also marked the steel here and the wood here as allowable, and just by this geyser here I'm going to put down a stockpile zone, just like so. I'm going to set this to allow all resources, and over time we should start hauling the steel and the wood to this stockpile zone. And what we're going to do to survive our first few nights is put a basic structure around this geyser, which will help trap the heat, and it means we're not going to freeze to death straight away. However, before we do that, we need to get a food source, so immediately I'm going to draft a colonist and have him hunt this seal here. That way we can butcher the carcass for a decent supply of meat, so we have food to last us for at least a day or two. Now, as you can see here, I'm being quite tactical by keeping our colonists stood on this geyser here, and what that's going to do is going to offset the hypothermia so we don't collapse too quickly while we're out hunting. Obviously we are unclothed, so as you can see our minimum comfortable temperature is 16 degrees. As we can see here, the outside temperature is -15, so we'll very quickly become hypothermic if we are not careful. Now the walrus is now bleeding out in 7 hours, so we need to finish this off nice and quickly before he wanders off too far. There we go. And then we should now haul that back to our stockpile. Just going to keep an eye on the hypothermia here. As we can see, it's now up to 16%, so I'm very quickly going to hang about the geyser, and that should bring it down. As we can see, it's now dropping quite quickly, which is excellent. And once it gets to 0, I'm going to focus on hauling the steel over to our stockpile, which he's opted to do anyway, which is excellent. And then we're going to start on a quick and basic structure so we can survive our first few days on the ice sheet. Okay, so what we want to do is a quick structure sort of like this. Now that's going to help trap the heat, and it'll mean we're not going to freeze to death. So what we need to do before we haul anything else, we need to start working on this structure. Ideally without going for a wash midway through, but clearly his mind is set on that, so there you go. Again, just going to get rid of the hypothermia there before we do anything else. And now it seems he wants to go and haul this wood to our stockpile as well. Ordinarily that would be fine, but I'd like to get this finished ASAP. I also want to put down a butcher area, like so, so that we can start butchering the wild animals that we hunt. And we'll set that to do forever. And we'll also just drop the food onto the... In fact, no, we will take it to the best stockpile. Okay, as we can see now, he's changed his priority, and we're going to start butchering the walrus. And that's going to provide us with quite a lot of food for the next day or two. Now, because we are in the ice sheet, this food will be frozen, so we don't have a time constraint there. And that is the major advantage of an ice sheet playthrough, is that your entire map is a giant freezer, so you don't have to worry about your food spoiling. Okay, so hypothermia is still at 6%, so that's still tolerable and within manageable limits. So we will allow Nitro to go off and collect the wood as well. Now what we can do is we can actually cancel the construction of those steel walls there, and we can swap them out very temporarily for a wooden wall, like so, with a wooden door. Over time we will swap that out for steel again, but for now wood is going to be fine. What we also want to do is put down a sleeping spot here. Obviously that is not a bed, we are sleeping on the ground, but it shows our colonists where they should be sleeping. And as we can see, the walls are helping to trap the heat, even though we don't have a roof on our structure just yet, but we can turn our attention to that in the morning once we've had a good night's sleep. Now if you remember to the colonist screen, Our colonist is a neurotic, so mental breaks are something we have to be mindful of. So with that in mind, I have constructed a hoopstone ring here, which will help keep his recreation bar filled a little bit better, and that's going to help his mood improve as well. Obviously it's currently being dragged down by the fact we are ravenously hungry, but we do have quite a bit of food on hand, so that's not an issue. Okay, after a quick reorganisation of our stockpile, what we're going to do now is put down a crafting spot within our little hut, and we're going to queue up the construction of a piece of clothing. Now the first thing we are going to make is a tribal kilt. That is because if we see here in our mood, we have the -4 uncovered groin modifier, and by constructing a tribal kilt we can remove that pretty quickly. That's also going to help reduce our, or increase I should say, our minimum comfortable temperature threshold, not by much, but every little does help. There we go, so we've constructed our kilt, we've immediately put it on, and as we can see that's now increased our minimum comfortable temperature to 5 degrees. That is going to slow down the onset of hypothermia somewhat, but it is still building up there. As I saw, it's 17%, so we do want to drop that down quickly. As we can see, adding the roof onto this structure has increased the temperature inside to about 40 degrees once the steam geyser is blowing. So, quite ironically, we are going to have to be careful of heat stroke. So we don't want to be spending too much time indoors, which is why I've also forced this door to be held open, as that will regulate the temperature a little more. If we had that door closed, the temperature in here could well be reaching 60 or 70 degrees, and it would be a cruel twist of fate if we were to suffer from heat stroke in the middle of the South Pole. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is get some more food, because this meat is not going to last forever. So I'm going to go ahead and hunt down the lynx. In fact, I'm going to steal that snow hare corpse. While it's going free, it makes sense for us to make use of it. So we'll send the Troro out to go and haul that snow hare corpse now. In fact, we have another one there as well, so we may as well have both. And we've just come close to an ancient danger. Now we could open that if we wanted to. However, there is a very good chance there may be mechanoids in there, and at this point in the game that would spell disaster. As we can see here, we're not yet suffering from hypothermia, so our tribal kilt is doing us the world of good, which means we can get more accomplished in the daylight hours without having to worry about returning to our base to heat ourselves up a little. I'm also going to claim one of the beds that were generated on the map and have it installed in our little shed. That saves us resources because we don't have to build a bed ourselves, and it's also going to help our mood because we'll no longer have the negative slept on the floor thought. So now we're going to go ahead and grab that bed and put it down in our little shelter. That's going to help our mood even further. In fact, no we're not, we're just going to go to sleep in the snow, which we don't want to be doing. We really want to bring the bed over here. Okay, so we are suffering from minor hypothermia now, so we do want to remain indoors. And overnight he will heat himself up and our hypothermia will dissipate. Okay, so we have a solar eclipse. That doesn't really affect us too much. We have no solar panels, so we can safely ignore that event. Right, so we've just butchered the 2 snow hare corpses that we managed to steal. That's provided us with another 18 units of meat, as well as some, is it heavy fur? Light leather? Yes, light leather. Only 9, but every little helps, and hopefully we can add to that stockpile very soon. Now we do have another snow hare on the map just here, but we also have this lynx and this Arctic fox. And I think it's probably not a bad idea to go and hunt those down before they disappear. However, before that we are going to have something to eat because we're down to 12% on our hunger bar. There we go, and we will allow him a quick game of hoopstone here to boost his recreation meter, which as we can see is also boosting our mood meter as well. Okay, unfortunately then, our stockpile is starting to deteriorate quite quickly. So, what we'll do is we'll have the meat consumed now, and then we're going to very, very quickly put up 4 wooden walls around our stockpile like so. Prioritise working on those. And then we can zone a roof over this area. And while that won't eliminate the outdoors degradation, it will get rid of this unroofed. So our stockpile should last a little bit longer until we can get an indoor stockpile sorted. But for now, that should do. Okay, so the snow hare has come to pay us a visit, so while it's here we may as well take advantage. We'll hunt this bunny down and we'll add it to our stockpile. Of course the issue is snow hares are small and fast, so getting a shot on isn't the easiest task in the world. But we've managed to kill it, and we'll haul it back now, and no doubt we'll butcher it straight away, yes we will. Okay, there we go. That's increased our stockpile a little more, which is excellent. And I think, providing we're not too hypothermic, which we are quite, so I'll grab some heat, and then we'll head out and hunt down the lynx and the Arctic fox. Okay, there we go. So now we'll send a Nitraro up here and hunt down these 2 predators. And that'll be extra meat and furs to add to the stockpile, which we can use later. Of course, the meat is the crucial one here. Once these 2 animals are gone, we'll have exhausted the starting natural wildlife, and then we're going to have to wait for other animals to wander onto the map in the future. Okay, so the lynx has gone manhunter, so we want to be careful of that. However, it's now bleeding out, and if we have a look here, its movement speed is 3.49 cells per second. Our own movement speed is 3.5, so we do have the slight edge, although it is a bit close for comfort. Okay, so we're having trouble hitting this lynx now. This must be about a dozen shots in a row without landing a hit, and just as I say that, we managed to secure a successful hit. But as we can see, it's still close on our tail. Okay, several hours later, we finally took it down. So we'll now finish the lynx off and haul it back, and then we can go to sleep and get something to eat. As we can see, we're on the as we can see here, we are on the verge of a major breakdown. That's something we'll want to avoid if possible, so we quickly need to grab some food and get to bed. Okay, so the food will help, and now if we send our colonist to sleep, that should help improve his mood as well. The hypothermia is also disappearing overnight, which is good. However, our mood hasn't improved much at all. Okay, our mood is now starting to increase, which is excellent. So today we're going to go out and hunt the Arctic fox as well. Provided he hasn't wandered off the map. Indeed it hasn't, it has died. So let's prioritise hauling the fox back to our stockpile. And then as we can see now, there is no more wildlife on the map. So we need to make sure we don't burn through our food supplies too soon, because there's no guarantee that there's going to be any more wildlife wandering onto our map for the next few days. However, we do have this body of water here which we can fish, and in fact what we'll do is we'll zone a fishing area like so, and then we can actually catch some fish to supplement our food supplies, and that should help. Okay, unfortunately we have suffered a mental break now. Fortunately, however, it is only the hide in room mental break, which means our colonist Nitraro is just going to spend the next few hours or even days just wandering around in a daze in their bedroom. The good thing about that is our bedroom is relatively warm, so we shouldn't suffer from hypothermia. And wouldn't you know it, we now have a psychic soothe. If only that came a few moments earlier, we could have avoided this mental break, but never mind. As we can see, he will still eat during his mental breakdown, so he's not going to starve to death. However, if we don't get these corpses butchered soon, we are going to have an issue because we have no more food stocks in our little supply area here. And I think then that's where we're going to leave episode 1 with our colonist slowly wandering around his bedroom in a mental daze. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As I said at the start, if you are, accustomed to the Transport Fever 2 series, don't panic. That will continue unaffected. As I said, this is just a little sideline project to keep me on my toes and to make sure I don't suffer burnout from playing the same game too much. So, all that remains for me to say is, as always, ladies and gentlemen, take very good care of yourselves. Ta-ta for now.